Hello, it's time for chapter 27 of our book, The Enchanted Wood, part of the magic Faraway tree series by Enid, Blyton. Chapter 27, A Most Exciting Night. If only we can creep up the slippery slip that turns right round and round in the middle of the trunk and get to Moonface's at the top, we should be able to help him, said Joe, feeling about for the trapdoor. I wonder why Moonface didn't slide down it himself, said Beth. Oh, he'd think that there would be plenty of red goblins at the bottom of the tree ready to catch him when he flew out of the trapdoor, said Joe, but I don't believe they know about this slide. He found the trapdoor and swung it open. Hold it open for me whilst I climb in, he said to Beth, and Beth held it. Joe began to climb up. But dearie me, it was most terribly slippery. He simply couldn't manage to get up the slippery slip at all. As fast as he climbed up a little way, he slid down again. He groaned, "Oh, this is awful. We can never get up this way. I shall keep slipping down all the time." "Oh, let me try," said Beth eagerly. So Joe slid out of the trapdoor and Beth crept in. But it was just the same for her too. The slide was far too steep and slippery to be climbed. "Whisher, whisher, whisher," said the trees nearby. Beth ran to one, put her arms around its trunk and pressed her left ear to it. She listened. "Tell the squirrel to go," whispered the leaves. "Tell the squirrel to go." "Oh, Red Squirrel, you go up," said Beth at once. "Can you manage, do you think?" "Oh, yes," said the squirrel. "I have claws on my feet to hold with, and I'm used to climbing. But what's the use of me going? I'm not clever enough to make plans with Moonface." "Whisher, whisher, whisher," said the trees loudly. Joe pressed his ear to one. "The squirrel can throw a rope down the slippery slip," whispered the trees. "Of course," said Joe with delight. "Why didn't I think of it?" "Oh, tell us," said the girls, and Joe told them. The squirrel must climb the slide to the top. He must ask Moonface for the rope that is let down for the cushions. But instead of letting it down through the branches of the tree, he must let it down through the slide inside. Then we can hang on and be pulled up. "Oh, that's a really good idea," said Beth. "Shh," said Joe, as he heard a shout from a goblin up the tree. "We don't want them to guess what we're doing." "Oh, the goblins are coming down," whispered Franny in alarm. "I can hear them. What shall we do?" "But we'd better get inside the trapdoor and sit at the bottom of the slippery slip as quiet as mice," whispered Joe. "Go in first, Squirrel, and climb up. You know what to do, don't you?" "Yes," said the squirrel, and disappeared up the slide, digging his sharp claws into it, just as if he were climbing up the outside of a tree trunk. Joe pushed Beth inside, and then Franny, and then he climbed in himself and shut the trapdoor just in time. 3 goblins jumped down to the foot of the tree and began hunting around about. "I know I heard someone," one of them said. "Well, as long as we don't let them pass up the tree, they can't do much," said another with a laugh. "I don't think you heard anyone. It was just the trees whispering." "Whisher, whisher, whisher," said the trees very loudly. "There, what did I tell you?" said the goblin. They jumped back into the boughs of the faraway tree, and the children hugged one another and chuckled. "I wonder if the squirrel has got up to the top of the slide yet," said Joe. As he spoke, a little sound came down the slide, a soft, slinky sound, and something suddenly touched them. "Oh, a snake!" cried Beth in alarm. "Oh, don't be silly. It's the rope that the good little squirrel has sent down," said Joe, feeling it. "Now, we'd better go up one at a time, for Moonface will never be able to pull all of us up at once." Franny went first. She was hauled all the way up the slide. It was very strange, so dark and quiet. At last she reached the top. Moonface was there, red-faced from the pulling on the rope. A light burned in his funny little round room. He was simply overjoyed to see Franny. He hugged her and then sent down the rope for Beth. She came up, and then Joe. Don't make too much noise, said Moonface in a low voice as he hugged all of them. The goblins are outside everyone's doors. Oh, Moonface, we're so sorry you're captured like this, said Joe. Couldn't you have slid down the slide and escaped? Or did you think that there might be goblins at the bottom? Well, I did, said Moonface, but I also thought that if I slid down, I'd be leaving all my friends behind in the tree, and that seemed a mean thing to do. Well, yes, it would have been rather mean, said Joe, to save yourself and leave the others. Oh, Moonface, what can we do to help? Well, I simply don't know, said Moonface. I thought and I thought, but I can't think of anything really good at all. Oh, it's a pity Silky isn't here, said Joe. We could talk it all over with her then. She's really clever. Well, we can't possibly get to her, said Moonface. She's locked in just as I am. Joe, Moonface, said Franny suddenly, her face red with excitement. I've thought of a way to help. What? Cried the others. Well, couldn't the red squirrel slip down the slide, out of the trapdoor, and take a note to the elves in the wood? Asked Franny. Do you remember how we helped them when we first came to the wood? They said they would always be pleased to help us if ever we wanted them. Yes, but how could they help? Asked Moonface doubtfully. Nobody quite knew, but Joe suddenly nodded his head and gave a squeal. Shh, said everyone at once. Sorry, said Joe, but I really have got an idea at last. Listen, the red squirrel can tell the elves to come up here in crowds. We'll pull them up the rope. Then Moonface can shout out to the goblins outside that he'll tell them the magic spells they want to know. And when they open the door, the elves and all of us can pour out and overpower the goblins. Well, that's a splendid idea, said Moonface, looking at Joe in admiration. Simply wonderful, said the girls. Joe was really pleased. And we'll unlock everyone's door and they can all join in, he said. Oh, my goodness, this is going to be exciting. Can you see how dreadfully angry the angry pixie will be, and Mr. What's-his-name? Those goblins had better watch out. Everyone chuckled. The red squirrel touched Joe's knee. Will you give me the note, then? He said. I know where Mr. Whiskers lives, and I'll take the letter to him and let him call all the elves together. Joe took out his pencil and wrote a note on Moonface's paper. He folded it and gave it to the squirrel, who folded it even smaller and tucked it inside his cheek. That's in case I'm caught by the goblins, he said. They'll never think of looking for a note inside my cheek. He sat on his bushy tail, gave himself a push, and set off down the slippery slip at a tremendous pace. Franny giggled. His tail is his cushion, she said. Isn't he a darling? I do hope you'll find Mr. Whiskers all right. Well, we'd better just sit quietly and wait, said Joe. I don't want the goblins opening Moonface's door and seeing us all here. They'll know we've got a plan then. Oh, we brought you some of the meal you didn't eat this afternoon, Moonface, said Beth, and she unpacked the bag. Here are some sandwiches, some cakes, and some toffee. Oh, well, we'll all have some, said Moonface. And I've got some pop cakes too. So they sat round quietly on Moonface's curved sofa and bed and chairs, and ate and whispered, waiting for the squirrel to come back with Mr. Whiskers and the elves. Whatever would happen then? Well, we'll find out tomorrow. See you then.